Welcome to Manavavani, the voice of humanism. This is an initiative of the South Asian Humanist Association and Indian Humanists. Today, I have a wonderful guest with me, Auditya Gunti, who is now based in Perth, Australia. Food has been a matter of great fascination for me and also for many foodies. And Aditya Gunti is the right person to speak to. He's a humanist, he's a rationalist, he wants to reform society, and more than that, he wants to feed people. He is the head chef at a top restaurant in a top hotel in Australia, a celebrity chef. I thought he would be the right person for us to talk, have a conversation with about food. I myself was fascinated by food writing. In my mother tongue, Telugu, Malati Chandur wrote a cookery book. But more than the recipes, it was a description of the food that fascinated me, that made my mouth water, that made me imagine things. Cooking is one aspect of food. Food is what keeps us alive. And then we refined it into something else, something that cultures aspire to when they see it in other cultures. It's a fascinating esquisse that we are going to map with Aditya. Aditya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. A pleasure is mine to have some time with you over internet. I'm really excited, looking forward for this show from a long time. Thanks for making it happen, sir.
I think we have a good recipe today for our
Definitely.
conversation.
We've got two
We are
quality
going to
ingredients
talk.
already, sir. You're the one and the second.
What we have today for today's show is a plan to review the history of food.
Okay.
You know, we take food for granted, we take our daily recipes for granted, and we very rarely step back and look at the whole story of food. And Aditya, you've had a formal training in cookery, and then you grew up into the culture of food, and you cooked up many wonderful recipes. We all know about that. Perhaps you could start off by telling me and those listening to us about the history of food. Where did it all start? We seem to be the only ones who will contemplate about what they consume. This is not the case with the rest of the animal kingdom.
That's right, sir. For any living thing, food is very essential for its growth and life, and humans are no exception to it. Cooking had been at least from 2 million ago practice in humans, and we even have an archaeology evidence for 1 million ago where charred bones were found in South Africa. Uh,
You mean million years ago?
yes, it's
Yes,
it's over it's over 2 million ago because after the fire was invented by humans and when they started to control the fire, they understood that the food can be cooked as well. It would have been by just a coincidence or by just an accident that they would have chuck a piece of meat into a spit and then they would have got a roasted piece and enjoyed that piece. If to say what was the early dish or the first dish that humans have ever made, I would say this is the dish, and we can compare this dish to the modern kebab because kebab says that this food that's cooked on an open fire or a spit with no water. So the initial dish that was ever made by humans would have been a kebab, is but a very rustic form of kebab is what I understand, without any spices, without any seasoning, just a piece of meat that's been charred over fire. And
Could this be chicken, lamb, or a fellow human?
absolutely, sir. If we see the evolution of humans, the development of brain, this is definitely the protein would have been a major part of human evolution. When we also see our evolution process of humans, the first food would have been also a fellow human, because the source of protein would have been an animal or a human. And if you look into our teeth itself, we understand that we have different kinds of teeth for different things to do in our mouth. One for chewing, one like a spear to just rip the meat apart, one for biting. So these are evidences that humans were once, and now as well, are meat eaters. And
So what are these teeth doing on Saturdays in Telugu?
This is a big joke to laugh at when people say I'm just vegetarian for a day, I'm just vegetarian for a week or a month. This does not make any sense. For any human to live a healthy life, a proper diet and a balanced nutrition is very much required. In the name of religion or in the name of cults, people should never go through this irregular and without any systematic process. They can't do these things to themselves. And then this is a very funny thing for me when people say they eat non-vegetarian for throughout the year, but just for 1 month they become a vegetarian. And then the new trends, the modern fashions also, people tend to be, oh, I'm a vegetarian, I would like to be only vegetarian for some days. This is all fad diets. I don't agree with this at all. Protein is definitely a bigger part of our life for our growth and of our cell structure.
Wonderful. Actually, you did refer to this fact that when there is more protein in the human diet, then that helps the body, and importantly, it helps the brain.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Uh,
sir. If we see the skeleton structures of the evolution of the humans, we see the development of brain has changed, and this would have been only by having the protein. And then not only this, the thumb coming to the side and the eyes coming to the front and the spine being straight, all these things also helped for the human to be a human like today.
That means if a lion or a tiger, which are 100% non-vegetarian, so to say, if they had an opposable thumb and if their eyes came into the front of the face and they were standing up straight, then they would have been as intelligent as humans.
Not only this, the digestive system of these animals and humans should also be compared. The digestive system has also been evolved in the evolution of humans. The animals, all these animals, they spend the time on the digestion, the energy on time and energy on digestion itself. They take the consumed food back to their mouth and they keep on chewing and spend a lot of time. And the consumption of the calories is gone only for digesting and eating. Whereas in humans, once we started to eat protein and then we started to start cooking things, the digestive system changed, and then there is less time. The time was less now to digest the food, and then hence humans had human cell structure, and the body has got this energy from the food to invest in some other growth of the body.
I must say that I do know a number of people who spend a lot of time eating and a lot of time digesting. But I think overall for the human beings, that would be the right story. That people are, well, humans
Yeah,
started eating meat either by accident or by nature's design, a fellow human or a little animal which could not run away from them.
true.
Maybe they did not even have enough tools to kill an animal. They
Yeah,
just had to catch hold of it,
yes,
like a rabbit or something like that,
yes.
something that they could run with
Should
and maybe throw a stone at and then bring it to the fire and then, if they ever had, to the dining table. And when there's been so much of protein input, the body, the human body, did not have to expend energy digesting it because protein is easy to digest, and the released benefits of this different way of eating led to a lot of this energy being used for the development of the brain. And that is what helped the human brain. grow to where we are. So if one or two generations or one or two castes do not eat meat over a few generations, that does not change the story of the humans. Let us
Definitely not, sir.
understand it that way.
100%, sir. That's right.
But this is one thing. You are hungry, you eat the closest person next to you, or you eat the closest animal, and then in the process you helped yourself. Uh, I talk of humanity in general. Um, that's right. But has it always been that we were always eating cooked food? I
Def
mean, a long time ago, about 20 odd years ago, I was traveling from Germany to France by train.
Mhm.
And next to me sat two young women, and they offered, though I did not accept, they offered to share the food they were eating. And they said they belong to a particular food, to use a word you have used already, a food cult and a food fad. They only ever ate raw food. They said we have always, humans have always been eating raw food before we discovered fire, and that's the way to be. I found it very strange, but I think in parts of the world they still eat raw food. I don't mean salads, I mean
I
meat and
understand, sir.
so on.
Yeah, you're definitely right, sir. I'm very surprised that you remember the dish and also the two ladies in the conversation. And with coming to the before, as we discussed before the fight was controlled and controlled and used by humans, definitely they were eating raw. It doesn't mean that we should be doing the same ancient things now, because we are now more intelligent, we are more matured, we know what are the right things and wrong things, we can distinguish what is correct and what is not correct. Food is an intake that we take every day, should be very hygienical, and it should be out of microbes and bacteria. So that is why the proper temperature for cooking and storing is important. Once upon a time we had meat raw. It doesn't mean that we have to eat meat today raw, because the bacteria or the tapeworms or other microbes that's in the meat or the animal, if we consume that meat, we will be transferring that microbes into our body, and it's a big health concern for all of us. However, there are cultures around the world where people still eat raw food. If I have to name a few, the sashimi from Japan, they eat the fish raw. They prefer to have a very freshly caught fish, and then they use a method called ikizime, which is a skewering of fish brain uh, between the eyes and then to the spine, which instantly makes a fish brain dead, and then there will be no production of lactic acid, and the fish remains fresh for a longer time and doesn't have any ammonia, because the production of ammonia will be stopped because of the brain death. Because there was no any muscular movement in that. Also, from sashimi in Japan is not only of fish, but they also have chicken and other meats also, but which are very rare. However, consuming raw chicken is highly risk. We might be inviting a bacteria like salmonella into your body directly. And if you see to the Latin America, we have a similar kind of raw fish, which is called a ceviche, where they thinly slice the fish and then marinate with spices or seasonings, or especially with citric acids, and then they consume it. And a Nordic dish called as gravlax is also kind of the same ceviche, but it is with more seasoning and then herbs as well. If you move to the Europe, to the Italy, also carpaccio from Italy is also a raw dish, where the meat is thinly sliced and served with some pickles and gherkins and mustard and onions. Mm, Poke from Hawaii is also a salad of seafood which is eaten raw. And I have to tell you about, you would have heard about tartar steak. It was originally a Russian custom to have ground raw beef, and then from there, when the Russians sailed to Europe, they brought this uh, raw beef eating tradition to Europe and then to America. This dish was not called a starter steak because a tartar is a sauce made up of mayonnaise, is a mayonnaise based sauce with pickles in it. When Americans customized this to their taste by having this raw ground beef with the tartar sauce, uh, it became steak a la American, and then it is transferred to tartar steak. So that's a history behind the tartar steak. Have you ever tried it, sir?
Wow.
Have you ever gone across this tartar steak?
I have not, but my wife has. And she said that it's a bit like tomato pachadi.
What a combination!
Uh, what a comparison.
Yeah.
Uh, I did not dare to eat it. It somehow felt very odd. And that was because of my own cultural background and upbringing.
Mhm.
But I'm trying to understand all these things that you mentioned now: sashimi, ceviche, gravlax, carpaccio, poke, tartar. All these are foods that today humans eat, right? This is not the history.
Yes.
This is something they eat today.
Yeah.
They eat the meat raw. This is not vegetables.
Yes.
This is the meat that is raw.
Yes.
So what do? They catch the fish, then they put this needle into its spine or whatever that is there.
In the
Of course,
brain.
it does not have a spine. I'm just joking. Um, and then and then they take the fish and cut it open, skin it, and eat it. Is that how they do it?
That's right, sir. To this tradition, there is also the dangerous fish. There is a fish called as the fugu fish, which is a poisonous fish. There are few glands in the fish tend to be poisonous for human consumption, but it is considered as a delicacy in Japan and America as well. In America, there are specially licensed chefs to process this fish. It's very
So
fascinating.
food is then an adventure, not just a pleasure. If it is dangerous for human consumption, you need to get a license to be able to eat it or cook it
It is
or serve
dangerous
it.
only when there are no controls to it. When it is under controlled temperature, controlled procedure with HACCP in there, it is safe for human consumption.
Right. And tartar, actually, you are saying you take a piece of a dead cow,
Yes,
put it on a table
yes,
or a chef's table,
yeah.
take take a take a
Mallet.
knife and do a bit of a keema with it.
Yes, you take a meat mallet and then work on your knife or use a mincer and then you finely mince the meat so it is very smooth in your mouth and then it melts away.
Right. So this is like keema which is not cooked.
That's right, sir.
Right. And they do not eat lamb and chicken like that. It's only for beef, is it?
There are also, but the meats that they eat raw, but they are not in bigger size of population that eat this raw meats.
Oh.
However,
And
when
then you
when you
said it
come,
can be dangerous. You said salmonella can.
yes,
uh,
Salmonella, E. coli, all this will be ingesting into your intestines and then causing a great damage to us. This also reminds me of two things now. There's also a raw live food eaten in across the world, and it's also considered as a delicacy, which is oyster. Especially in Australia, people love to start their meal with at least a half a dozen of oysters, and these are
One
live.
second. One second. You're not talking about a live carrot or live lettuce. You're saying an animal
Uh,
is alive when we are eating it.
yes, sir. It's a seafood, the food from the sea. It's from the molluscus family of seafood.
Hmm?
Um, it has got two shells in it, and then they shuck open. They get it from the ocean, and then they shuck open fresh. And then when it is still alive, even though the muscle that connects both the shells is torn away because of the shucking, They put a little bit of lemon juice or a Tabasco or any other mineral vinaigrette, and then they have it into the mouth and then gulp it inside. These are live.
Right. That's a bit. Um, but I also know that near Rajamandri area,
Mm-hmm.
you know the termite queen, the queen of the termites.
Yeah.
I know that many people prize it. They take it, it's like a long worm, is it not? The termites themselves are small, but the queen termites population is a largish worm looking organism, and they swallow it alive. Um, as I said, it's a bit difficult for me to swallow this, but we know that raw food is eaten around the world. But let us go back to cooking, because eating raw limits our choices, does it not? You can't eat everything raw, just a
Yes.
few things,
True.
and not universally practiced, just in a few cultures, and in some cultures only in certain sections of the population. And you said 2 million years ago, possibly, that's 20 lakh years ago, possibly already humans were cooking. Now, 20 lakh years ago, we were not even really human. We were beginning to become
Early stage of
human,
humans. Yes. Yes. Early stage of
very,
becoming.
very early
Yes.
stages, because a million years ago, we were still with Homo erectus, not with Homo sapiens sapiens.
That's right.
So the ancestors of the human race also had the intelligence, the knowledge, and the skill to cook. Maybe they had also the skill to make fire or simply got it off forest fires. Um, we don't know exactly the mechanism by which they accessed fire. So, what did they do? They just made this kebab and that was it?
That would have started with this kebab, and then once you later on the stages when we tried to make the bowls, a kind of bowl with metals or mud, especially, we
A
also
container.
a container. Maybe that's the right word to use.
Yeah, metals are just
Yeah,
10,000 years or
yeah.
more,
So
that's it.
when they were making with mud, probably, so
Or
they
stone.
could be a stone. Yeah, that's I think more apt actually. They would have hold the water in it and they would have start to steam some dishes in it. Just put some water, put some meat into it, and just boil it, and then have the meal just like that.
So we got pattar ka gosht this way.
Patarka ghost is not a boiling method, but could be relative because both are cooked in on the stone.
Okay, just trying to make connection, that's all. When you are not a purist of food, I think you can make these connections. But when you are an expert like you will hesitate to say yes to those. So we had fire, we had meat, and then we had a dish or a bowl or a platform on which you could cook. But earlier, when we were talking, you mentioned seasoning and spices. When do you think these things came in?
So once humans started to understand the meat can be cooked, they're going on hunting. So previously you said that they would have thrown a stone on an animal that's around, and from there to they went to become a hunter to go hunt for an animal and then bring it. But when these people were not healthy for the day, or the environment, the climate is not helping them to go for hunting, they were in hunger, so they need a technique to preserve the food that they hunt the previous day. Maybe that is why they induced the spices into that, because the spices would have made the meat to slow down the process of spoilage of the meat.
So this may have been through trial and error, I suppose.
Absolutely, sir. This nothing in cooking, nothing was. ever planned is what I understand. There was no, unlike like art, you have a picture in your brain that you want to put it forward on a piece of paper. But for initial cooking, early years of cooking, it would have definitely been a hit and miss. Just a try, something, sometimes it comes out a kebab, sometimes it turns into a charcoal. It's just a hit and miss.
And possibly these were people living by the sea and they were able to understand the importance of salt and how it helped preservation of food. Maybe they tried also drying the food and found that that also preserved it.
That's right, sir. Preserving have been the next steps of the cooking. They have used the salt. They understood the salt could also preserve the meats for a longer time. The air dried, especially when living next to the ocean, the moisture content in the environment and also the saltiness next to the ocean had made is a perfect climate for a meat to be air dried naturally. Even in modern days, if you go to Italy, all the cold meats that we enjoy today, the salamis, saucissons from France, these all are still air dried outside because the natural temperature over there helps the meat to be dried. The saltiness makes the meat to last longer in there.
Hmm. Actually, a friend of mine, a Swiss friend of mine, I know dried her meat by putting it outside the window in the winter time. She thought that that was a good way of getting the meat, um, shall we say, cured? But for curing, you need also smoke, don't you?
In curing, we have different techniques. We also use smoking, we also use salt, we use brine, the different methods in curing.
Right. So, what is this smoke thing? How do they, why? Maybe just for the flavor, or are there other reasons why they use smoke?
Initially, they would have enjoyed the flavors with the smoke when they're spit roasting it, and then they would have planned to smoke things so that it gets the flavor. The low heat makes it dehydrated, so the excess moisture in the meat would have gone, and it retains for a longer time.
Hmm. Because, and that's something that continues, is it not? I remember traveling in Norway and going by train and bus, these long stretches of snow-filled fields, and you have poles erected by humans,
Mm-hmm.
connected by
Wires.
cable,
Yeah.
and from which are wire,
Yeah.
from which are hanging sliced pieces of meat, fish, which are left to dry to the air. And then you go to the US, and in the US, you will see in most shops that jerky is sold.
That's right, sir.
That's dried meat. I know that in Africa, wildebeest meat is also similarly cut into large chunks and dried and sold. Much of it is smoked. So, this is a tradition which we still continue. It's an ancient way, maybe, of preserving food, but even in the ages of refrigerators, because of the taste perhaps, and because of tradition, that continues.
We still have this similar kind of drying meats in Middle Eastern countries. In India, they also dry the meat of goat after they slaughter. This is because when they slaughter a bigger animal, they could cook only the amount that they would want for the day or the next couple of days. When they have the meat left over, the only way to make use of that meat would have been to dry it and then store it and use it when required. As you spoke about the jerky is from South America. We also have a similar kind of meats in India as well, and also in Middle East.
Oh, we have jerky style meat in India too.
Yes, sir. I'm not getting the name what you call in local language. It's still a dried goat meat, thinly sliced dry goat meat that is dehydrated under the natural sun.
Is this something that the Telugu people practice as well, or?
This is into some religious communities, not for everyone. It's only into a religious community. Only a particular religious
Right.
community will practice this.
Right. We, of course, have dried fish and dried shrimp in Telugu land.
Yes.
Um, oh, that's interesting. How, in all this, in all of human foods everywhere in the world, dairy becomes an important part, is it not? Milk and milk products. So there is one thing is we started off possibly with vegetables, because while you mentioned some kind of teeth which are meant for eating meat, there are others which are meant for chewing food other than meat, vegetables, vegetation. And that's a tradition we still continue. We eat a lot of vegetables, and we eat meat. Many of us do. Most of humanity eats meat. Uh, and even in India, I think it's the wrong cultural stereotype that people think that in India people are vegetarian, which is not true. 80% of India eats meat, but the ones who are able to represent India in language and in form that the outside world understands, people get this idea that these are vegetarians, therefore everybody in India is vegetarian. And apart from meat, there is animal product, the most important animal product that is part of our lives, which is milk based. How did this enter into our food?
Speaking about the yogurt and cheese, this would have been definitely by accident. This invitation was definitely by an accident. When people were traveling in hot regions, they were carrying the milk. So initially, they were using the stomach of sheep to store and take along when they travel. So when they had this milk in the sheep's stomach, a sheep stomach lining, and the temperature, the hot regions made the milk to curdle. The enzymes in the stomach of the sheep curdle the milk and then transformed into a curd and then into a cheese. So the cheese and yogurt would have roughly, rustically, would have started from there.
Hmm. And I guess for one reason or the other, maybe for the meat, maybe for the milk, humans started domesticating some animals, also for protection, because we know that the wolf is what has become the dog. And the dog came to stay and share its life with that of the humans. And
Also helped in the
probably,
hunting process for the humans. The
yes,
dingoes.
absolutely. So humans started living with animals, not simply hunting them, bringing them to stay with them in their habitations, which means people were beginning to settle down somewhere. They were not constantly on the move. They would stay at least for a season or many seasons in one place, have some dogs with them,
Mhm.
maybe some cows and some sheep and goat as they started becoming domesticated, and use their milk and use their meat, and they started farming. I would guess this is how it started. And then what you mentioned about, is the
The,
sound all right? I
yes,
got
yes.
a beep sound.
All good,
All
sir.
right. Oh, very good. Thank you. And then, as you said, in the transportation, in the preservation, and in the consumption of dairy, they probably discovered new forms of milk, dairy products for human consumption. When did vegetables come in? Do you have an idea?
Um, I would leave that to you, sir, if you can enlighten me as well in that.
Well, you see, um, from what I know, from a non-specialist knowledge about this, the early humans were eating mostly grass, but not really like our
Current grass.
um, bovine species consuming grass. Um, but they did use grass and then made paste out of it. In Telugu, we call it
Chutney.
gandi pachadi. Gandi pachadi or chutney is that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they ate lots of leaves. They ate fruit, a lot of it. And then they started experimenting with other parts of plant, sometimes the plant itself. Some of the vegetables that we use today are very recent ones. Cabbage is a recent vegetable.
Broccoli is
But
also
eggplant,
recent.
broccoli is
Yeah.
a recent vegetable.
Kale.
But kale is a recent one. But if you look at, let's say, the older vegetables, brinjal is native to India. Scientists believe that the first brinjal ever, that means eggplants or aubergine, they would have been grown in India. Some human liked it, and then they started cultivating that plant, because there's a big difference between discovering a plant and eating its fruit and bringing it home as a plant, taking the seed, making sure you plant the seed, you cultivate it, and then you make enjoyable food out of that. And possibly that is how the Telugus got up to Gutti Vankaya.
The fascination of Wankaya comes from there because of its origin of our country, India.
Very, very
Likely,
likely.
yeah.
And these are all guesswork.
Yes.
And it's very difficult because when we say our country, which part of the world do we mean by our country? You and I today now are living in Australia. You are 4 hours by flight away from me in Melbourne. We are speaking in a language that is not our mother tongue, and we are talking about our country. I wonder what is our country? And if we say India is our country, which is a natural answer, what makes up India is another question. When the British were ruling us, India meant all of Pakistan today, all of Bangladesh today, a lot of Burma today, which is Myanmar, and even parts of Afghanistan. These were all India. When Emperor Ashoka was ruling, parts of Afghanistan were included in his empire. But that was not called India then. So it's very difficult to appropriate a dish, a language, a place based on a stereotypical description.
Yeah.
But yes, for the people who grew up in what is today called India, some vegetables may have been attractive. And then there are also fruits like tomato. There is a great, big, pointless, useless, time wasting debate about whether tomatoes are fruit or vegetables. But we can discuss uh, about it being a vegetable or a fruit, but we know that tomato is used extensively in cooking around the world, but also in salads. And then many things that we think are to be taken for granted, I mean vegetables, are not native to the land of our origin, nor have they been common throughout the world? Anywhere you go in the world today, you will see potatoes. But potatoes really come to us from the Americas, South America. And the potato got imported into Europe through the sailors who went there, people who went a bit after Columbus, who discovered the route to the Americas, so to say. And they brought this vegetable, something that they found was growing in the ground. Was it a tuber? Is it a vegetable? Is it a fruit? They didn't know that, and they called it the devil's fruit. And people thought that it was a horrible vegetable. They didn't want to touch it. They said it's the fruit of the devil, and lots of prejudices against the potato. And people who go to Paris and use the metro station will know that there is a metro station called Parmentier, Parmentier. Now, Parmentier is famous because he made potato attractive to everyone. And the technique was very simple. He said that this was a fruit favored by the king, the royalty, and that this was exclusive, it was not for everyone. And therefore, it had to be protected while it was being grown. So he created a nice, big, massive fence around his potato field, but he obviously intending that people should go through them, he left some gaps in the fence. Now, if it is a food of the kings, then ordinary people are really interested. So ordinary people started stealing the food, potatoes from the field, which is what the farmer, entrepreneur, Parmentier wanted. And they started eating it and liking it.
There are also
And this
dish.
tells us something, one last thing, Aditya. This tells us something about food. Some food is associated with royalty, some food is associated with gods, and some food is meant for ordinary people. Isn't that strange?
It is, sir. To extend the things that you said about the potatoes, I wonder the dishes called potato parmentier would have also been with from Mr. Parmentier himself. He
I'm sure it is in honor of
yes.
this man that they named it that, yes.
I also heard that he used to cook these potato dishes on a buffet. He used to make sure that there are potato dishes on this buffet, and then use the potato flowers are also a bouquet for people uh, when he needs. Hello.
We are back. You were telling me about the buffet.
Yep, Mr. Parmentier have used the potatoes in his buffets to serve to the people that who have come on invitation, and also he used the flowers of potatoes to give as a bouquet to people. So he would have been promoting the potatoes so much because in 17th century in France, for 24 years there was an official ban on the potato consumption, thinking that it is a cause of leprosy.
So food was also subject to prejudice of this kind, superstition of this kind.
Even tomato was also seen as a suspicious fruit, and it was only used as an ornamental plant for so many years.
That's very interesting. Can you imagine living life without tomato today? I don't mean you as a chef, but in general, eating.
Across all the cuisines, the common ingredients are potatoes, onions, and tomatoes. You can make a chutney with tomato, you can make a relish with tomato, you can make a halwa with tomato, You can make a pulao with tomato. You can make a sauce with tomato. You can make a soup with tomato. So these have been so much into the food culture. These things, when we look back and listen about these stories, we feel funny about these speculations that they had.
But you mentioned onions. I think Telugu people, Indian people are learning to cook without onions these days. Do you know that?
Yes, so there is a.
Where you have to pay 150 rupees, 100 rupees a kilo. I think they are saying I'm better off without eating this.
There are also a group of people who does not eat onions and garlic in their daily food, uh,
Oh, yes.
thinking that this onion and garlic garlic should not be eaten, because when you have to harvest these vegetables, you have to uproot the entire plant and thus killing the plant. So they think this as extreme violence to the plant, and they don't eat any vegetation that's under the ground.
You're right. That leaves very few things that they can eat, is it not?
It
And if you are saying killing a plant is not good, then maybe eating a plant's children is also bad, which is what fruits are.
the seeds, the fruits, the barks, these all part of plants.
And so maybe they should stop eating completely. Yes, there is a lot of this kind of discussion that keeps going on in our circles. What is the food that we should eat? And is it moral to eat a certain kind of food? And is it immoral to eat another kind of food?
A moral for
As a
few
chef, how do
people.
you handle these kind of things?
It's very tough when to please people who ever come to restaurants, because every person is unique and everyone has got unique interests and tastes towards food. It's a very challenging profession to make everyone happy when they leave. Um, when speaking with people with the prejudice of what to have, what not to have, what is moral, what is not moral, it's very debatable point, because I eat chicken, I eat fish. Someone does not eat chickens. For them, maybe the chicken is not moral for them. The people who eat chicken, some people doesn't eat beef. For them, eating beef is not moral. So this content of moral should be left aside, and food should be seen as a food, is what I would think as a chef. The nutrition
So,
that we need for the daily life of human health is food, is what I understand.
so you're really saying food is nutrition to start with?
That's it.
But there is more to food than just nutrition, is it not? I mean, especially when we are talking about taste, the pleasure of eating, cuisine as a culture, cooking food or consuming it also as culture, then we have expanded the role of food. It is not simply that which keeps us alive. I know many people live to eat. I was saying, Aditya,
Sir,
that I know of many people who actually live to eat.
uh, I live to cook and I cook to live, sir. I love cooking. It's my passion. It's a fun. It's art. There's a lot of sensory involvements when you make a food. It's a play when you come up with colors, ingredients, textures, temperatures, flavors. As an individual, any ingredient does not make any sense. But let's take a rice. If you take a rice is very bland and boring. But when this rice picked up with other ingredients like spices and then seasonings and then meat and then put some water with application of heat, turns into a biryani, which is one of the favorite food for all Hyderabadis.
That is absolutely right. So humans have mastered or are developing the art of making food go beyond its role of nutrition to make it appealing, um, to make it part of culture, living as an experience. I've surely remember some dishes, even consumed 25 years ago or 20 years ago, for the sheer experience that food gave me. Its texture, its color, its feeling, the aroma that comes with it, and the sense of fillingness that it gives you, of fullness, of satiating your desire to taste something new. So I do share that kind of passion, but I should tell you, I do not know how to cook at all. I know only how to eat and critique
You should start
food.
with boiling eggs. It's a simple dish. You should try it once.
How to cook an egg is the most famous TV show that Delia Smith ever made.
Eh,
Delia Smith wrote a book, I think, the very famous British chef, television chef, Delia Smith. She earned so much money out of this boiling of egg book. She bought an island off Scotland.
An egg could get an island. Wow. Uh, Egg is a very versatile
Imagine,
ingredient. You can use that.
imagine what writing a book about chicken will do if an egg can get you an island.
That's my next project. I should start now, so with your recommendation.
You do you focus on kangaroos at all living in Australia?
I do, sir. When looking into the Aboriginal cuisine over here, the bush food is one of the cuisines that's emerging as a modern cuisine as well in Australia. I have been working with few indigenous ingredients of Australia, which out of which was one was kangaroo and then emu. I've come across the emu sausages as well, and kangaroo burgers as well, and there are also crocodile sausages, um, crocodile fillets that they put it on the grill. There are some
Mm.
bush tucker vegetation, leaves, uh, seeds, nuts that's very indigenous to this land, and it works very well when you um, balance them well with other ingredients.
Right. I must tell you of my fellow humanist friend Prasad Rajagaru.
Hmm.
In his home in Sydney, I had Kangaroo Biryani.
Oh, I saw your post about that. How was it, sir?
Um, the biryani taste, of course, is what people from, especially those from Hyderabad, will come to appreciate. The meat of the kangaroo I found to be a bit hardy,
Yeah,
a bit chewy, which is not the same as how it would be with lamb or chicken or beef biryani. Um,
that's a
I
very characteristic of a game meat. It's very strong, tough meat. So when you cook meats like this, if you add bit of raw papaya to the marination with the raw meat, the enzymes in the papaya will tenderize the meat and then makes the meat more soft.
Yes, yes. So even earlier you mentioned it, now you do again. So cooking also requires, I mean, high level cooking, and I recognize that you as a chef are looking at not an individual or a family level scale meal of two or three people consuming. I know that every day, every meal, so that's three times a day, you cater to about 1,000 people's food needs in your restaurant.
That's right. So we get an,
So you're feeding 3,000 people, 3,000 meals a day with your team of highly qualified chefs and cooks and so on. So you are at a different level altogether,
and
of
I have to
course.
tell you that we are not only cooking one dish, we're at least cooking at 250 dishes, at least of 250 dishes, or maybe 350 if I'm not exaggerating. So 350
So about
for 1,300 people,
1,300, I'm trying to understand.
the volumes of it
1,300 people per meal,
per
three
day,
times.
1,300
That's
people.
about 4,000 people,
Yeah,
or at least 4,000 meals with 250 dishes every day.
every day.
done. I think it's for people like you that Saturday is very helpful. Saturday evening, I don't eat. I'm fasting. So the chef can have a break.
On Saturday evening is really very busy for us. People come to enjoy because food is the association among people for joy, celebration, um, fun, happiness, togetherness, for a dating or for a meeting. Food is a common point between many people. It's a common interest point among people. It's a communal activity. I'm sure in your childhood also you have seen people across the streets would have come and made any particular dish or a chutney or a pickle. Could you tell some of your experience with that?
Yes, indeed. I mean, if you look at, yeah, it's as we are coming towards the end of our first episode in this series, um, we started with food keeping us alive, then certain kinds of food making us more intelligent than we would otherwise have been because our brains developed so. Then we moved into what kind of preparation we gave to the food before we consumed it. Some of it we ate raw, so to say, off the butcher's knife. Some of them we marinated, we applied spices. Some of them we preserved for another time of the year to eat. Then we moved on to what could make the consumption of food a pleasure and a part of culture. Sometimes some food is associated with royalty, the gods, and some easily accessible to all. So from nutrition, we moved into food as part of culture. And as we move forward, we see that the origins of food are also very exciting because not all plants grew everywhere. But today, with the modern kind of transportation system, in Indian supermarkets, I can eat apples grown in Fiji
California. Yeah.
or in California. I can get stuff kiwi from New Zealand. Though, of course, not many know, kiwi fruit is not actually in origin New Zealand, but China. Um, but the preparation of food, which was your question, the harvesting of food and the preparation of food became a communal activity for all members of the community to join in. Agriculture, all families went with their sickles to their neighbors' farms and did some work, and the neighbor reciprocated. And then we know that when you're harvesting, same things happened. And in specific response to your question about pickles, if you look at the coastal districts of Andhra Pradesh, where mango pickle with mustard is quite famous, that itself is a ritual, that itself is a communal activity. All your neighbors, people in the community, people living on the same street come together, they help you cut the mango, dry it, mix the salt and the chili powder and the oil. So it's something people do together. And then, not necessarily at the industrial scale almost at which you operate, communities of people can come and eat together. Sometimes, as for example, in many desert traditions of the Middle East, of the Arab Middle East, we see that there'll be one big, large plate and 20 people sitting
Mhm.
around it, and all of them eating from there. And then concepts of hygiene came in, and people said, so many hands in the mouth coming back to the food, that may not be good. There's concepts of purity, concepts of I can't eat somebody else's food tasted by someone else. And you started having smaller plates to individual plates. Some people were eating with their fingers, and
Cutlery was then.
ask a typical South Indian how to eat sambar. They would be shocked if you eat with your spoon, or the sambar has to trickle down to your elbow before you can relish the pleasure of eating it. So,
And also to end with
so
the curd as well, the curd rice.
yes,
It has to
yes.
go all the way to the
So
elbow to enjoy.
absolutely. And so it's really fascinating, is it not? How food started us off, the manner in which it did it, and how it became an integral part of culture. Who will who will be surprised if we say that the reason Columbus did what he did to
Was to
look for
find
an easy route to India
for the
was to
spice.
look for spices.
Yes.
Imagine that you travel half the world just because you wanted some cloves and cardamom and a bit of chili. To do all that, to world trade was built around the trade of spices. People went to Kerala for the spices that Kerala was giving, to Sri Lanka for the same reason. Um, so it really, food and clothes really were how um,
That
people justified traveling around. They went around the world not for sightseeing, but gathering food and
ingredients
clothes,
and yeah.
really.
As you speak about spices and seasoning, it also brings to my mind now that salt was once used as a currency as well. The salt slab was used as coins, and then they even paid people salaries as salt. And there were in the Moorish merchants' age, uh, the weight of salt was traded with the weight of gold.
Isn't that wonderful? You just had to go to the sea and get the salt, but they didn't know it. Um, and of course, many people will remember that the word salary
Comes from the
comes
salt.
from the word, the Latin idea, the word for salt, sell. So when you were paid your salary, you were really being paid your salt.
Salt.
Not worth your salt, they say. And remember, Gandhiji built that great
Salt
movement
march
of salt satyagraha.
against the tax to the British.
Yes, yes. But we also should know and remind ourselves as we come to an end of this show that salt is not all that very good for you. Ask your doctor. It's the cause of blood pressure and so many other human ailments. So one has to be careful about the consumption of salt.
As you're talking about cooking food, there are also some doctors who have come up with some foods. Have you heard of this Usmania biscuits? Was from Usmania Hospital, and then the Swiss pharmacist, physicist who had brought this recipe of Berkshire muesli for the patients in his hospital. So these two food was from the hospitals that we enjoy today. Especially about Usmania biscuit. Do you have any connection with that, sir?
Only as a consumer. Yes, our connection is that we come from Hyderabad, and this is a food that was invented, so to say. For people who do not know, you have to go to a typical Hyderabadi bakery and ask for Osmania biscuits. It's a kind of biscuit which melts in your mouth. It really melts in your mouth and is very tasty. And this is what the doctors of Osmania General Hospital they made as a health supplement, shall we say. People who were sick were admitted to the hospital who were not able to eat well. They wanted them to get a nutritious diet to quickly recover from their illnesses.
Having cookie as a
And
prescription is a great idea, sir. I love it.
I think this is a wonderful note on which to end, Aditya,
Sir,
to prepare the ground for the next show. That food can be medicine at times. Food is seen by some as poison, by some as sacred, and some as taboo. And some of our people have been told that this is the only way of consuming a particular kind of food. Let's look at these different things when we meet again in the next episode. Thank you very much, Aditya. We know the expertise and the background that you bring to this show, which makes it very authentic. Thank you very much for your contributions. I look forward to the next
thank you.
episode.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. And after speaking so much about the food, I'm really hungry now. I'm heading to cook something and have some food now. And it's been a great time discussing all these things and great knowledge for everyone to share with. Thanks for your time, sir. Looking forward.
Thank you, Aditya, for being on this show. This was an hour-long episode on the history of food with celebrity chef Auditya Gunti, who is a humanist. He's from the Telugu land and now settled in Australia as head chef of a major chain of hotels and restaurants in this country. And he typically caters to 4,000 meals a day, an industrial scale. But as you can see, he has a lot of interest and passion for food. So I'm looking forward to the second episode myself. Thank you for listening to Manavani, the voice of humanism, supported, sponsored, and brought forward by the South Asian Humanist Association and Indian Humanists. Thank you. This was Babu Gogineni.